best actors working today. They've both embodied heart and soul of Ferrari. Please join me in welcoming Shailene Woodley and Penélope Cruz.
She was excellent.
Thank you so much for being here. It's so nice to see you two together because, for obvious reasons, you don't share scenes in the movie.
Very bummer, total bummer.
Well, I was actually going to ask, is it a little bit of a bummer to like run into each other on set and be like, oh, I wish we could, yell at each other in a scene?
No, but for me it was sad not to have any scenes with her because I love her work so much. And
Yeah.
I saw her in the street with Michael, introduced me to her, and yeah, a couple of times we saw each other. That was all.
It was passing. It was like, hi, bye.
There weren't like these great Italian dinners you guys all got together for or anything like that?
No, I mean, Michael gets up 7 hours probably before we start filming. And then after we finish filming, goes straight into editing and working on the scenes for the next day. So he was constantly busy and we were filming at different times.
Yeah.
So I think we were in Modena at the same time, but the hours were really long, and so by the time everyone was done.
That's amazing. By the way, I think I heard Michael Mann is 80 years old.
Yeah, it's incredible. We don't have the answer for that mystery.
His energy makes no sense.
And he's the first person there and the last person to leave at night. That is incredible.
He's just always, I mean, I've never seen him tired once. And actually in London at the end of last year, we were doing press out there and I ran into his wife and him in the elevator at night. And I was like, how are you guys? And she's like, oh, we're great. How are you? And I was like, oh, I'm so tired. She's like, no, you just don't say it. I was like, what? She's like, you just don't ever say you're tired. And I was like, okay, so you just lie? And she's like, no, you just don't acknowledge it and it will go away. And I was like, wow. That must be Michael Mann's secret.
That's the secret. It's funny because I never want to say that I'm tired around actors because you guys work crazy hours, and I always feel like silly complaining because like, oh, I didn't have enough coffee this morning. I don't know how you do it.
No, but that's how we felt with him because when we arrived there, like she said before, he had been there already 5 hours and he would be the last one to leave at night. And for you to understand the level of dedication and attention and control, which is necessary to be a great director, I think. But I understood how this was gonna be when I received like 5 options for houses to stay in Modena. But I got them directly from him. Yeah. And I said to my agent, I thought I was gonna do this myself because I always do it myself, or do it with you, or they have some agent that's like, no.
Not only that though, he walked through all of them.
He went personally to
before sending them to any of us to make sure that they
the houses where the actors or the crew was gonna stay. But then I told him, Michael, but you're too busy, you don't have to do this for us. And it doesn't matter what you say.
Wow.
He was kind. It was like he wanted to make sure that also that we were not gonna be too far from the set. It was about like we were gonna be
ulterior
but
motive.
also not too far from the set.
Well, and I heard he also cleaned for you every night. Would come in and housekeep a little bit.
I mean, by the end of it, I saw so many things that I wouldn't have been surprised if he was also there, like doing the laundry or something. It was like everything. It was like 20 clones of Michael Mann.
That's amazing. And I bring up Michael Mann because I think he's one of those directors that every actor dreams of getting. I don't know if it's a phone call or a message or a telegraph, but like someone saying like Michael Mann wants to discuss a project with you. When you sort of first heard about this film, what did you know or think you knew about the story coming in, and what were you surprised to learn? Like I was saying, like I don't care anything about cars, and I was so fascinated by this entire film.
I zoomed with I didn't know anything about the story at all, and I had a Zoom with Michael and had read the script before, and so tried to do as much research as I could on this character, and there's nothing online, so I was like, gosh, how do I impress impress him on the Zoom without being able to say anything about what I discovered. And he was so generous and kind and asked such curious questions and had so much prepared on his end. It was in a weird way, like, I've never had a Zoom like that with a director before, where he was offering information out of excitement and passion, and I didn't even have the job yet, or the role, and it was a get to know each other, but also, let me tell you every single detail about this woman's life, and Enzo's life, and Laura's life, and this whole world, and I mean, it's not a secret, Michael he's struggles with hearing sometimes, and not sometimes. He struggles with hearing, he wears hearing aids, and so on Zoom it was difficult because we couldn't really hear each other, and I remember I'd ask a question and he would just continue on with what he was saying, and I was like, oh my god, he hates me. I don't think he likes me at all. He's not answering anything I'm asking. And then I realized what the situation was, and we talked about it, and then, yeah, it was just this really organic, authentic, like, two artists. There was no Michael Mann of it all, in my experience. There was no like this man on a pedestal who was trying to make me impress him or offer him something. He was just there to kind of offer his passion, and it was something I'll never forget.
At some point, did he offer you the role, or did you read any scenes with him, or was just you talked about other things and then he was like, please come aboard?
Yeah, we talked about a lot of history and about other things, and then I got an email after our Zoom saying, welcome aboard.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Because I've heard actors sometimes, they don't know if they've actually been offered a part or not. There's kind of that nebulous area where someone
It did kind of feel like that.
Yeah.
I was like, am I playing here? Because you're talking about it like I am, but I don't have the role. So it was a sweet, endearing Zoom that just I've never had in this industry before, where it felt like somebody was talking to me as an equal in an environment where we weren't like already on a journey together.
And for you, was this your first time meeting Michael?
I met him like 15 years ago. I've always been a huge fan of his work, and we had dinner, my husband and I had dinner with him like 10 years ago, and then I got this phone call to set up a Zoom, and in the Zoom he told me that he was thinking about me for this role, and he sent me the script the same day, and I read it. The day after we talked, I told him I loved it. He offered me the movie. He said, when can you do it? And that was it. And he was very helpful to put like I think also with you, he did it, like trying to put all of our scenes together as much as possible, because then they knew they were gonna get into the races, and that was gonna take like 2 months, and we were not there when they shot that, which was in a way, sad, because it was very interesting to see, but every 2 seconds of any of those scenes of the races was probably like 3 days for 2 seconds.
Really?
It's incredible what they did, but he was very, very kind and very helpful with that also.
I love a director who is like conscious of his actor's time.
Yes.
Who
yes,
respects that.
Yeah,
Because
because-
it'd be very easy not to. Sets are a big undertaking.
And for me, before I didn't care so much, because it was like, my life was an adventure, going from set to set. It was also, in a way, better. If you were gonna be there for 3 months and work less and have more time to explore the place, and that changes completely when you have children.
Yeah.
When you have children, I'm never away from them, so I either work in the summer, so we can all travel together, or in Spain, and do what there are a lot of great things there happening, but he was very helpful that way.
And your husband worked with him previously, right, on Collateral?
Yeah, he had one long scene.
Yeah, it's a great
One
scene. Did you guys get to trade like insider secrets? Like, this is what Michael Mann likes, and this is, you probably don't have to, people are.
Of course, we talk about it. Of course. It's not like we talk about only about the profession or only about the
Yeah.
business, but like sometimes to read each other's scripts is fun to hear his feelings or his thoughts on it. And
Did he give you any tips on like ingratiating yourself to Michael, or?
he liked Michael very much.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
prefer to have a director that is tough and cares about the movie, and I'm very trained, very well trained with Pedro Almodovar in that way, because with Pedro on the set, there is no joke, like you feel like he would give his life for the movie.
Yeah.
And he expects the same thing from everyone else. And this is I say like they are the artisans of film, and I really think like younger generations of filmmakers have to listen to their interviews and watch all their behind the scenes over the years and see like what is the attitude that they have on the set. Because even if Michael is 80 and you never see, okay, he's there like feeling entitled or feeling like taking anything for granted. It's like if I'm here and I'm making this movie, I'm giving my all, and I want everybody else to do the same. And I much rather have that than have somebody that is happy with everything you do and everything is a walk in the park. I don't trust them.
I agree. And I think there's the reputation that goes with hard directors, like certain people have these reputations. And working with Michael, what was I think the biggest surprise to me was that I didn't find him, there were difficult moments just because he would push us to our edges, but I didn't find him hard to work with as much as I was amazed by the fact that he was so desperate, like exactly what you said, to make the best movie possible, that he held himself at such a high standard and had expectations of himself, and that just automatically raised the expectation of everyone else. And so it wasn't like this, I'm gonna tell you what to do because I'm the director. It was that we're all in this ship together, and if all of us perform at the highest level, this can be what it's gonna be. And if one person or one department falters, it's not gonna be what that's gonna be. So why don't we all make sure that we're showing up every day with the right attitude, professional, and have the right mindset. And I was blown away by it. It really changes everything.
I love that, and I think most actors would say they don't mind tough, they mind unreasonable. There's a big difference.
Disrespectful.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Or I was gonna say I mind yelling. I don't even mind yelling. I just mind, it's not my favorite thing.
How and when
Yeah.
But for example, with Michael, I was observing him a lot, the way he was with actors that would come there only for one day or half a day or just one line, and he would go away from them, away with them to explain the history of that character, and really like give them the place that they deserve, even if you're there for a little bit. Like he loves actors and he has so much respect for the profession, and I was always spying him when somebody new came in, and the way he would deal with them. With other departments, with some departments he had a little less patience, I would say, but he loves acting and he loves the actors.
And I think actors know sometimes those one-day jobs are harder than like being a supporting, because you gotta come in and establish everything in just like one or two scenes.
Yeah, much harder.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think he knows that they would get more nervous because they're there just for that day, and he's very, very kind in that way. But some of the camera department or I feel like, whoa, did you say that to him, or did you have that reaction? And they are like, don't worry.
They all love each other, and they all come back again and again.
I'm like, how many movies did you do with him?
Yeah.
5, 10.
Wow.
And I'm like, I can't believe that reaction. But it's like a family, like the trust, and that they know each other so well. But I've never seen him have a reaction like that with any actor or actress.
Wow. I'm curious because with each of your characters, I feel like we can relate to both of them so much. And with Lena, there's something about this person who you're just sort of embodying unconditional love, truly, for her son, for her lover. There's something so beautiful about that. And I know you weren't able to find out much about her, but what was it important for you to communicate in playing this character? And I say character knowing that she's a real person.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, because she's a real person and because her son, Piero, is still alive and their family is still alive, it was important for me that he felt honored by her because she was the most important person in his life. And I remember the first time I met him, and he's close to 80 years old as well. we sat down together and I was like, so can you tell me a little bit about your mom? And he took a deep breath and he could barely get any words out. He only shared a few sentences, but to watch this 80-year-old man who runs Ferrari and who has had the life that he's had, get so choked up over the love and the affinity that he had for his mom kind of told me everything I needed to know. And the few photos that you find of Enzo where he has his shirt unbuttoned and his tie off and he's relaxed is always around Lena in their home. And I spoke with her niece and I asked, like, did she ever complain about being in this position where she was in love and she wanted certain things for her son and she knew she wasn't gonna get them, and she wanted certain things for herself and knew she wasn't gonna get them. And her niece was like, no, she decided at a very young age when she got pregnant that she knew what the situation was, she knew he was married and she knew it would never change. And she accepted that and she chose to live a life of service from a place of choice, not from a place of demand. And she's like, I've never met a stronger woman in my life. And that was sort of the North Star for Michael and I, was how do we represent softness without being someone who doesn't speak their mind, and who, because Lena did, she was very vocal about her opinions and her thoughts, but she did it in a way that came from like a true feminine softness instead of a demanding need to control.
No, there's something beautiful about, making that choice and being at peace with it.
Yeah, she was at peace.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it wasn't easy. I'm sure there was a lot of discomfort within herself because of what she would want her life to look like. And she was very progressive for that time.
Yeah.
Like, they talked about how she was listening to music that no one else was really listening to in her community, and she was reading books and so I think because of that, there was probably a piece of her that always wished life looked different. But because she'd made that choice and she stuck with it, I was like, God, life would be so much easier if I could just make one choice and stick with it.
Right. And Penelope, I've heard you say that you kind of wanted to bring some justice to Laura, because I think she's been very misunderstood by people. I've heard, people kind of like dismiss her as, the crazy first wife, when I don't know any woman who isn't going to relate to what Laura's feeling.
Yeah, what happened is that when we were doing research together, Michael and I in Modena, and he introduced me to people that knew her, and I would also go around in the street and ask people that I didn't know. Like, we're doing this movie, I want to know about Laura Ferrari, and I really didn't like the answers. They were very dismissive and there was no compassion, because they would say she was just very difficult, people were scared of her, and she was crazy. I said, but crazy why? That she lost a son. Yeah, but nobody liked her. I said, but her life story. I felt like how they knew that was enough for them to have some compassion, but zero. So this thing became to grow inside me of, the need to give some justice. And I know the same thing was happening to Michael, but we were not talking about it. We would just continue to do our research. We went to the apartment where you could feel inside that bedroom where she spent so much time alone, and how depressed that she was. And I realized that by the wallpaper that she had chosen, which was like forced, like happy colors, and a print that was very disturbing. And yeah, it was like the opposite reaction of me. I could feel like the weight of that room, and I started crying in the room. And Michael, I said, are you feeling what I'm feeling? Did you see this wallpaper? He ended up putting it on the set. And a lot of things like that we discovered. Like, he took me to the market where she would buy food every day. He introduced me to the doctor that was very close to Enzo and Laura. And the third meeting I had with the doctor, he decided to give me the letters that he had, that were love letters between Laura and Enzo, where thanks to those letters, I understood that the love was always there. And it was very damaged, mainly because they could never recover from the loss of a son. But the fact that with such a hard life, they had no compassion for her, it lit something inside us, like, we need to give her a voice, because she represents so many women around the world, then and now, that still live completely in the shadows of man and are so suppressed by this society, where she was functioning with a 10, a 20% of what she was, really dead inside. So that's why the more I realized that's what we were doing, the more grateful and biggest honor that it felt, you know, to be able to play a character that gives voice to these women.
Yeah. I mean, she literally endured the worst thing that can happen to a person.
The worst.
She literally, there's nothing worse. Why do you think people didn't have compassion? Did they just love Enzo so much?
Well, it's like Enzo, they don't see just the human being. The same with her. They see Ferrari and what that represents for them, and they feel like it's their own product in a way. It's like, it's from Modena and the factory and the history, so they don't see the person. They don't see the person in him, they don't see the person in her, because I think without that connection to Ferrari, you ask somebody in the street, you know that this woman went through that, and there would be compassion, but not in this case. They found her as a threat to the company because she had like some legal power, and the men could not understand why he was not taking that away from her. But actually, she was one of the first investors in the company, because when they were completely broke, she had something like a jewel or a very valuable bag that somebody gave her, and she sold it and put that little money into it. And because of that, it kept growing. And Enzo never forgot those things. And that's why she had the power that she had, relative power, because she could have been so much more involved. She was taking care of the finances because he knew that she would see if somebody was lying, and that she was so meticulous, and they shared this obsessive how do you say, like the obsession with details. And you see their books, no, I don't think it was OCD, but what he had as an engineer and what he had with the cars, he had with the numbers. And he knew that he was gonna see from a kilometer away if somebody was lying. So he also knew that he needed her. He couldn't trust anybody else. But she didn't have a place of feeling, okay, this is mine too. This is something that I have created from the beginning with you. She had nothing.
Mm-hmm. You've both played real people before in your careers. I'm curious if I'm sure it changes your approach when you know you're playing someone who lived and breathed, and sometimes it's nice to have things to draw on. Do you have a preference? Like, do you like creating a character from scratch? Do you like having somebody to draw on, or does it change from role to role?
I mean, it always, for me, it's sort of, is it just me or the microphone's going like louder and higher? Yeah, it does change role to role, and even when you're playing a real character, for me it's always been important to honor that person and honor the family by being respectful of what their story was and how this impacted their lives, more so from a place of Shailene than a place of as an actor, because ultimately if you're trying to recreate something and it's not authentic and it's not coming through an authentic source within you, then it never feels real or honest when I'm watching it. So it is sort of a fine line of wanting to honor the family and at some point going, okay, I have to put all of those opinions and that noise aside, because if I listen too much to that, then I'm not gonna actually, but it does change role to role, because if you're playing a musician or you're making a biopic, you know, like that's very different, because the movements, even like the way people move their face and their small little quirks, that will change a performance well, much more than trying to do that for someone like Lena Lardy. So it does change, but I think authenticity is key, and so making sure you can be authentic in whatever shoes you're walking in as a character will ultimately create the best performance and create the most respect to the person.
And you have these scenes with this wonderful young actor who plays Pietro. I believe his name is Giuseppe.
Yeah, Giuseppe.
I mean, kids keep you honest on a set.
They do. They do. Kids and their parents. He was great. He was an interesting kid, actually. I've worked with a lot of child actors, and I was a child actor. I started acting when I was 5, so I've been around kind of the child thing for a long time. And he would show up to set sometimes very excited to be there, and then other days would show up and And I was like, do you even want to be here? Do you want to be an actor? Is this interesting to you, or do you want to just play? And I think that there was, first, English wasn't his first language, so I imagine that there was a lot of fear wrapped up in that. And I think he had this idea of working with Michael and working with Adam, and so there was, luckily our camera operator was Italian, and so he was able to kind of play with him and speak with him and in Italian and help him feel more comfortable. But once he found his zone, you know, the beautiful thing about kids is you never know in the middle of the scene if they're gonna start picking their nose, or if they're just gonna get up and leave to go get a snack, and you're like, oh, the camera's rolling. And he was very free in that way, and so that created a nice energy on Michael Mann's set.
And for you, do you have a preference in approach? You've obviously played some people who are very recognizable, like Donatella Versace, and I don't know that Laura is probably, nobody's probably that well known.
Yeah, exactly. I felt there was a big difference when you play somebody that everybody, everyone in the world would recognize, and everyone knows how she walks, how she talks, and is so particular in behavior and personality. And that was the case of somebody like Donatella.
Yeah.
The other characters that I've played that were real, like Virginia Vallejo was known in a lot of places, but not like Donatella, like worldwide. And Laura, very little known about her. So it, for me, it only really changes when it's someone that is so well known. And here I could decide, okay, what is the essence of this woman will tell me how she walks, how she talks, how she moves. With Donatella, all of that is decided.
Yeah.
So you just have to completely obsess with her and watch thousands of hours of material because it's there. But in other cases, it's more through your imagination.
Yeah. You mentioned that, you know, Pietro got very emotional talking to you. Do you know if he was able to see the movie? I don't know if I'd be able to be honest.
Yeah, to my knowledge, he's seen it many times, over 6 or 7 times.
He loved it.
Yeah, he loved it. And this was, I mean, Michael was trying to make this movie for 25 years, is that right? A little over 25 years, and Piero said no for the longest time and was not interested. And Michael finally was able to convince him over 2 decades later, which I think is a really beautiful thing. So when he watches the movie, it's not just like, you know, 2 or 3 years. This is almost 30 years of his life being nagged to make this movie, and now it's finally been made. And I also saw him at the premiere when we were in London and asked him what he thought, and he got choked up again. So that was very special feeling.
That's amazing. What a great review too. That's the best you can ask for. I actually want to remind people this movie is still in theaters. Please spread the word because it's such a special film. I want to thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for being a great audience.